Breaking the ice on those tough conversations about drugs can often feel awkward. That's where Red Ribbon Week comes in. I'm your host, Jodie Sweetin, and today on Awkward Conversations, we're looking at this campaign that was created to honor the memory of slain DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, who paid the ultimate price, and a hometown that would not allow his sacrifice to be forgotten or in vain. Red Ribbon Week has blossomed into the nation's largest drug prevention and education program, and every year it allows parents and kids to come together in fun activities to further forge those bonds and relationships that we always talk about as being the greatest weapon you have to keep your kids substance-free. And I am so glad to be joined by my wonderful co-host, Amy McCarthy. Hi, Amy.
Hi, happy to be here again. I'm Amy McCarthy, and I'm from Boston Children's Hospital. And I'm so excited to introduce one of our first guests today, Elizabeth Golshteyn, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications of the National Family Partnership, a nonprofit founded by parents in 1980 to educate about the dangers of drug use and offer strategies to prevent its misuse. They're also one of the main initiators of Red Ribbon Week.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Jodie and Amy. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Really, really glad you could join us today.
Also joining us is Don Mathis, who works out of the DEA's Houston Field Division as its Demand Reduction Coordinator. Hi, Don.
Hi, how are you today?
Hi, Don. Hi. And we are also really honored to have a very special guest with us, Miss Myrna Camarena, Agent Camarena's sister. Hi, Myrna.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Myrna, I'd love to start with you to tell us a little bit about the story of your brother, Agent Kiki Camarena, and how his an unfortunate death has come to inspire Red Ribbon Week and what it means to you.
Yes. Back in February 7th, 1985, my brother had volunteered to be stationed in Guadalajara, Mexico. He transferred from Fresno to Guadalajara. And on February 7th, he decided to meet his wife for lunch, Mika. As he's walking outside the American consulate, he is grabbed and pushed into a car, never to be seen again. Well, his wife is waiting for lunch, doesn't show up. But she doesn't think much about it because he worked late and long days, so she goes home. But when he didn't come home to sleep that night, then she began to worry. She says, he would have called me if he was working late. So then she called one of the agents assigned to the DEA office in Guadalajara, Agent Wallace. And he says, nope, we don't have any cases going on. So that triggered the red flag. And they start calling Mr. Kirkendall. They start calling just about it. Nope, nowhere to be seen. That's when they knew he had been taken. And for 30 days, we didn't know whether he was coming home, where was he? No communication whatsoever. 30 days later, they found his body, and in his honor, the Red Ribbon campaign originated. And I used to go every year to the schools and talk to the children and tell them the story that they weren't wearing this ribbon just because it's saying no to drugs. It is saying no to drugs, but there's a life behind it. And I would tell them, wear it next to your heart because he gave his life to stop the drugs coming into the communities of the United States. And that's the story of my brother, which is not a very nice one, of course. It caused a lot of pain to the family. And even after 30 years, we're still here honoring him. And I thank you for that.
I am so glad that we can honor his memory. And, that is such a tragic story. I would love for you to maybe share a personal story or memory of Kiki that brings some joy, that shows why he was such a wonderful person and so giving and talented at what he did.
Well, the personal thing about him and I is he's the one that got me into DEA. And we used to work in the same office. I used to type his reports. We started in Mexico, California. The DEA officer was very small, and I would see him go out undercover. It was just like my co-worker, but at the same time, he was my brother. And it felt kind of strange. And I went in there first in March of 1974, and he came in June of 1974. So I was told him, hey, you need to respect me. I'm your senior. But just by a few months, I said, it doesn't matter. I'm still your senior. So we kind of joked around like that and until we were both transferred. But it's kind of a beautiful memory that I have of him actually working in the same office with him. And we both believed in the cause. So
Mm.
I think that's why we both joined the DEA.
I love to think of the two of you working together and having that fun relationship. What message do you think that Kiki would want to give to young people today?
Of course, the message is stay away from drugs. They kill you, they're dangerous. But I also want to add that the education starts at home. And parents should start from the very beginning and show them this is what is not good for you. And then continuing with the Red Ribbon campaign, make a connection and say, look, this is what happened to this gentleman. He gave his life because of him. And I did have that incident where I was talking in Portland, Oregon. I had just finished speaking to an elementary school. This little girl comes up and grabs my dress and she says, because of what happened to your brother, I will never do drugs. And we're talking about a 7, 8-year-old. And I'm like, if I touched one child, then my mission in speaking to different schools all these years has been accomplished. And that's the
Yeah.
message. If the parents can start educating their children at home, then emphasize it in school, I think that will make even a bigger difference in their lives.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we focus on here, all 3 seasons of Awkward Conversations, but every episode we really, really stress the importance of relationships, of communication between families, parents,
Right.
caregivers, coaches, all, it takes the village, and it takes the village having those conversations. Um, Now, Elizabeth, I would love to hear, how parents, teachers, community leaders, businesses, all of that can get involved in Red Ribbon Week, especially if they're participating for the first time. What are some of the ways that parents and communities can really show up and help support kids in this?
Parents are the number one educators, influential factors in kids' lives. So in 1988, NFP sponsored the first official Red Ribbon, and throughout the years, we have opened up the community to educators and parents to get involved in various ways. We are co sponsored by our partner, the DA, and we allow our schools and our communities and parents to send in a photo of the theme that year. So this year's theme is Be Kind to Your Mind, Live Drug Free. And they send in a photo of what it means to be drug free, what it means to you personally with a personal story. They decorate, they use the double loop red ribbon, and they send it over to us, and they get involved and get their peers involved too. It's not just a one person type of contest. It's just everyone gets involved, and kids get involved, teachers get involved, and we get pictures of them doing, maybe Crazy Socks Day for that week that happens from October 23rd to the 31st. We also, ask for people to light up in red, buying a red light bulb or asking local landmarks to light up. And if you're in a school or in a home, turn on a red light bulb just to bring awareness to the community. And if you go to our official website, www.redribbon.org, there's so many other activities to get involved within your community and school. We find that Red Ribbon Week is a way to bring the community together, no matter where your race is, your gender. It brings it together with one goal in mind, is to stay drug free and to have a happy and healthy life and to reach your full potential.
Great. That sounds like wonderful ways to bring awareness to the community and just those bonds and those relationships we've talked about. Some really great opportunities to continue to build those.
Yeah. Dawn, I would love to hear you speak to this as well about teachers and parents and community leaders getting involved with Red Ribbon Week.
We have activities that will go on throughout the month. We have like the pajama day. They'll have we in Houston actually have a candlelight vigil that we hold in honor of loved ones that have people who have lost their loved ones to drugs and alcohol. Our big Red Ribbon Rally, we've had taken different cities to Austin, which is our state capital, to recognize the dangers of drugs. And we've brought hundreds of kids to the Capitol, maybe kids that have never seen the Capitol before. We light up the cities in red to bring awareness to this. Our city halls, our bridges, I think the Empire State Building has been in red. I mean, just all across the country, we light up and let people know that, the dangers of drugs. People can get involved all year round. Sometimes we do one-on-one mentoring where kids mentor other kids inside of schools about the dangers of drugs. They really do listen to their peers. But I have to agree with what everyone said on the line here. It always goes back to the parents. The parents talking to the kids, being a part of it, and not just 1 week during the month. One of the most successful things a family can do to keep kids off of drugs is to have dinner with them. If not every night, at least designate one day during the week or a couple of days during the week.
I know that one of the great things about Red Ribbon Week is that it's a really great door opener to having some of these conversations. I think a lot of times parents aren't quite sure how to start the conversation, how to talk about it. Red Ribbon Week provides some amazing resources and things. Can you talk about any of the really impactful results or changes that you've seen in communities as a response and as a result of Red Ribbon Week?
Yeah, definitely. We've had several kids that from elementary school that have participated in the Red Ribbon Week programs that are now going to college and have remained drug free. As long as the conversations are continually happening, then we do see that the kids will stay away from drugs. What we do tell parents is prepare your kids to answer the question when their friend says, hey, do you want to smoke a joint or do you want to have the drink? A lot of times kids aren't prepared for that. And so they don't know how to answer it. And now with the fentanyl crisis that we're seeing, we've seen more people get involved, more educators, more parents actually get involved in having these discussions with the kids, because it really starts with just basic discussions in schools and churches.
If I can bounce off of Dawn's response, parents around the dinner table, they are the original social network. They establish routine communications. And with Red Ribbon Week, it's not only celebrated once a week, it's celebrated throughout the year. And we have over 40,000 schools each year. So we get participation and we get community involvement and engagement, but it all starts with the parents.
Right. Myrna, you shared a really beautiful story about the young girl that came up to you and, was inspired to live a drug-free life. I'd love to hear more of those stories about some of the wonderful ways that Red Ribbon Week has had an impact.
I don't quite remember the location where we spoke because it was my mother and I. My mother would speak in Spanish and I would translate into English. And my mom has since passed 2 years ago, but I always remember how she looked so much forward to speaking to the kids. And a lot of the kids didn't speak Spanish, and my mom only spoke Spanish. So I would translate, and she would just hug those kids, and then she would tell them in Spanish, remember, don't do drugs. And the message was, it was fantastic when when it would come from her, because that was her son that gave up his life for this cause.
We'll be right back after this message.
Saving lives means staying informed. Knowing the dangers of using fake prescription pills can help those you care about and keep our community safe. As a parent, educator, neighbor, or friend, we all play a role in building safe and healthy futures for ourselves and our loved ones. Do your part to take the first step today. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com to access education, prevention, and treatment resources. Fake prescription pills laced with fentanyl are deadly. Be their protector. Be informed. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com.
I think your story reminds us that, we're talking about how to prevent young people from getting, involved with substances or connecting with them. But we should never lose sight of the fact that so many young people are exposed to substances in many different ways.
That's extremely important because I remember on my trips, I would take my little girl. And from the very beginning, she was about 5 or 6, And she would see and listen to what I did. And she also told me, Mom, why do kids or adults, why do people use drugs? And I tell her, well, I don't know. I know there's a lot of peer pressure out there nowadays, and there always has been. But it's harder now than it was, what, 35 years ago or so?
Yeah, things are so much different.
Yeah,
now, for
incredibly different. And there's so much peer influence, but also oftentimes children are being exposed to trauma or drug abuse at home. And, having conversations with the children and families who are being directly impacted is so important because, like you said, getting children to recognize what's going on in their own home and being able to talk about it or being able to really have someone who's there and supportive. As much as we are focused on the parents having these conversations at home, oftentimes parents are struggling with substance abuse themselves. And we need to also be able to have the conversations and reach out as communities, as schools, as caretakers to those children as well, because they are extremely at risk for seeing it, every day and being exposed to it even younger.
Yeah, I think it reminds me too of, we've been having discussions, Myrna, you had just mentioned, your child having questions about why do people use substances. And I think so many of the parents that I work with have the same question about their children who are using substances. Like, why are they doing that? And so often, for young people, it starts as perhaps like experimentation or, peer pressure, fitting in with peers. But that brain development really kind of clicks in. And sometimes it provides relief to something that a young person wasn't even really sure that, or familiar with, that they needed relief from. Sometimes they're very, very aware that, they're looking for some type of escape or something to help them cope. But I think that's why you talk about the vulnerability of the brain here, and being able to extend that time that there's that exposure to substances, give young people opportunities to get involved with some of these activities that you all have spoken about, so that they can learn how to cope and they can learn how to kind of manage the daily stresses of life, so that the substance doesn't really kind of create that cycle of, I need that to feel better, I need that to feel good.
One of the important things that I think is also, needs to be talked about is talking to kids about stress relief. Kids today live in a much more stressful and information laden world. I mean, as an adult, we scroll through the news and go, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. Talking to kids about stress management and stress relief and, grade expectations and sports expectations and all of these things are so important, because it's not just, exposure or peer pressure. It can be, the struggles with mental health. It can be, struggles. It can be abuse at home. It can be so many different things. And substance abuse is, for so many people, a solution to acute trauma. And if we're talking about that and really dealing with some of those underlying causes.
Jodie, I so appreciate, what you just said about stress relief. And, one of the most important pieces of stress relief often can be connection and community and just being a part of something bigger than yourself. And so I really have appreciated the discussions today around activities that allow parents and kids to discuss this topic of substance use, and time to really be able to spend together. Having these opportunities for the activities that allow parents and kids to discuss the topic of substances and the time spent with your kids are great ways to forge that bond and educate that we've been talking about this whole series along. One of the main sponsors of this show is the Elks Drug Awareness Program, which is the largest all-volunteer drug education and prevention program in the country. We want to welcome Bill Bryan, who's the director of the Elks DAP. Hi, Bill.
Hi, how are you, Amy? Nice to see you.
You too. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Bill. Really appreciate it. So, Bill, is it true that Awkward Conversations originally started as a series of comic books with a teacher's guide at Marvel? I mean, this is, technically we are part of the Marvel universe is what I'm trying to say.
We're superheroes, obviously.
It's very true. In fact, I think it was around 2006 that we developed our first comic book that was called Hard Choices. And that featured Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. Then that moved into Never Alone, which featured the Avengers. And then our last comic book, which was, I think, produced in 2017, it was called What Heroes Do. And so we went from superheroes to regular everyday heroes: firemen, policemen, moms, dads, teachers, and children. And that then um, got us into the video business. And now, amazing, in such a short period of time, we're already into season
Yes,
3.
and what I hear is that next season is going to be a musical, and we will be singing and dancing. No,
I hope I
I
won't
say,
be
Bill, I hope you
featured.
will be
Bill, you're in
here.
it. You're starring it. I hope you know you're now a musical star. No, and again, laughing, talking to kids, having fun about Red Ribbon Week is something that is so important. Using art, using comics, using language that kids can understand and relate to, talking about it in terms of truth and reality and real conversations is so I mean, that is the greatest way that we can get in and help relate to kids. Kids don't want to be they don't want to hear a long sermon about don't do it, and then they need to be active and engaged. And one of the things that the Elks has done so well is really create activities, create artistic fun inroads to have these conversations. I mean, there are some really great Elks resources that we've been talking about, age appropriate articles for kids, like why certain drugs are bad, getting fit, cyberbullying, which is so important. There's all kinds of other things that the Elks has offered. So I just want to thank you so much, William, for giving us the opportunity to do this.
So yeah, in addition to the Elks Kids Zone, there's also the Elks Teen Zone, where folks can find, again, age-appropriate videos, activities. There's a student resource center, the Elks Drug Quiz Show, and LGBTQ bullying awareness information.
So important.
Yeah.
I really always, so many of our LGBTQ youth suffer from substance abuse, and again, that sense of community, that sense of belonging is so important for kids who are maybe a little outside of the mainstream, or outside, they are looking for that sense of community. Maybe.
Absolutely. There's also some cyber safety issues, supports, conflict resolution, and so much more. So we also have resources for parents and for teachers, for our school folks, which include lesson plans and planners on alcohol, on bullying, depressants, general drug and substance use information, marijuana and cannabis, tobacco, decision-making, and many more subjects.
And I would encourage parents, grandparents, anyone out there in your listening audience to visit those websites so that they can see the work that's gone into this and the information that's been made available to the kids. The activities are fantastic. We have a costume character, Elroy, who's been featured in our comics. He's prevalent throughout through the websites. And of course, there's our YouTube channel. And I don't want to sound like an infomercial, but I would encourage people to go to that and to subscribe. And that brings this wonderful season 3. It also brings season 2 and season 1 of Awkward Conversations to anyone who's interested.
Bill, I know you also have some involvement in Red Ribbon Week, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and how folks can get Elroy the Elk at their school.
Certainly, and thanks for that question. Also, throughout this journey, we've met a number of fantastic people, including Myrna Camarena, Kiki's wife, Henry Lozano, who was a childhood friend, who was also involved in the early development of the Red Ribbon campaign. We provide local DEA agencies, and I think this year alone, 58 different agencies throughout the nation. We provided them with red ribbons to pass out. And if folks would like to have Elroy, our costume character, at a Red Ribbon celebration, all they need to do is contact their local Elks lodges, give them a couple of weeks head time notice, and we'll be glad to have Elroy at whatever celebration.
I feel like Elroy needs to be a co-host next season. I'm just saying. I don't see Elroy here, and I would like to see Elroy. But it's a great way for young kids to get excited and involved. I remember, the fun of Red Ribbon Week, events at school, and it's such a great thing that the Elks has done, and joining with the DEA to really bring so much education and awareness, not only to schools and communities, but also into people's homes through shows like Awkward Conversations, through all of the resources that you've put together. It's so incredibly vital and important. And, there's not enough focus on getting parents that information out there so that they can have these real conversations with their kids.
Elizabeth, we know that your organization has been one of the main kind of backers and forces behind Red Ribbon Week. Can you tell us a little bit more about the activities and things that your organization does?
We were established in 1980, and so throughout the years, we have provided resources and nurturing that full potential in parents and kids. We're not asking parents to be drug experts, but to stay informed and continue to have those readily available resources to have that conversation with their kids and to stay informed themselves, because every day is changing. And another campaign we have alongside Red Ribbon Week is Lock Your Meds, which is a multimedia national campaign that really emphasizes locking your meds and properly securing your meds and making sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands. So we do a lot, and we're here to help and be a guide for parents. And, in a positive way.
It's all about conversations. And I love that you brought up, keeping meds safe. We've also talked about that on this show. Again, back to really the root of everything, which is open lines of communication, having that bond, having that relationship, knowing your child, and also being an influence on, your kids' friends and other people and other young people that you have in your circle of influence, and you can make a difference in people's lives just by having information, knowing what to look for, and being ready to have those awkward conversations like we've done on all 3 seasons, thanks to the Elks and thanks to all the work that Bill has done. I want to thank our guests today. Myrna Camarena, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing the memory of Kiki. Elizabeth, Dawn, Bill, you guys have done so much great work and have really provided so many excellent resources, all of which will be in the show notes for this episode. We will have links that you can easily click on for parents, caregivers, so that they can find all the information that we've talked about in this episode. Does anyone have anything that they want to make sure that gets out there?
Well, I just returned speaking at a gang conference for all policemen in San Jose. But I was away from speaking for 10 years since my retirement. I'm back. And anybody that would need me to go speak and say the story, I would be more than glad to. And also, I'd like to emphasize, thank you so much for keeping my brother's memory alive. I really appreciate that after all these years. I want to thank every one of you and everybody that we keep
absolutely.
on going, right?
One of the heartbreaking things about this is all of the lives lost, both directly and indirectly, to substance abuse and the drug trafficking trade. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. We really appreciate it.
Wonderful. And we have everyone thinks of us just as the law enforcement agency, but we do some great prevention work. And they have Just Think Twice for kids, Get Smart About Drugs, different websites they can go to for adults. Operation Prevention is something DEA has done with Discovery Health. And they have a website for college students, Campus Prevention. These are some personal testimonies, their videos, their presentations, things that are interactive programs that parents can use and help in having some of these awkward conversations. We dispatch agents out all the time. But I want to say this also. One of the things that we've learned, whenever we do presentations to the schools, we always have some type of resources or some help for the kids, because many times kids will come up to us and say, you know, my friend is using drugs. What can I do to help them? Or my family member's using drugs. And so we try to make sure that all the agents are equipped with that kind of information on, here are some resources. These are some places that you can also get help.
Fantastic. Arming parents, educators, and communities with as much information as possible. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Awkward Conversations. And make sure to join us next week, where we will be having more conversations and hopefully normalizing some of those awkward conversations and really getting as much information out there to parents and caregivers as possible. So thanks for joining us on another episode of Awkward Conversations. We are out of time, everyone, but please join us next week for another awkward conversation. You might be your kid's best drug dealer, shockingly. According to a report by the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, 53% of teens who misuse prescriptions got them from a friend or family member.
We want to make sure that the message is communicated that, yes, people need medication, but they shouldn't be taking other people's medication.
SAMHSA data shows that a majority of people who have misused a prescription medication obtained it from a family member or friend.
And make sure to check out getsmartaboutdrugs.com. Parents, caregivers, you can find so many resources of great information there about how to talk to your kids and make these conversations a little less awkward. A huge thank you to the Elks DAP, which is the largest all-volunteer nationwide drug awareness program, and also a huge thanks to the DEA for their outreach program and for making this possible.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Awkward Conversation series are solely those of the individuals, speakers, commentators, experts, and/or hosts involved, and do not necessarily reflect nor represent those of the production, associates, or broadcaster, or any of its employees. Production is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information contained in the series available for viewing. The primary purpose of this series is to educate and inform. This series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. This series is available for private, non-commercial use only. The production, broadcaster, or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.